The discussion points for what is today's state of Black Detroit. All right, let me know when we're live. All right, welcome to State of Black Detroit 2024. This is the fourth iteration, and we are live in General Baker Institute. We have an audience here with us, and I know you're not here because you're watching online, and we welcome you and definitely thank for you checking out and supporting all things Detroit is different, especially one of these events that started from a kind of like what's going on during the pandemic. What can we talk about? What can connect? With a great friend of mine and someone that is completely grounded to community, and that's Dr. Yousef Bun Shakur. I'm Khary Frazier, the founder of Detroit is Different, and that means a lot of different things. So Detroit is Different is an organization that is committed to heal community through culture, using media and events. This is the culmination of how that all comes together, because this is media and an event combined. With that, the healing part is really to question you and question a lot of the panelists that will be speaking today about different aspects and dynamics of the city of Detroit. And really, we're talking about Black Detroit. What can be practical? The theme is personal is political. This was just kind of said as a blurb that Yusef was saying, and it stuck so loud. And beyond that, it's the do-it-ourself model for where we need to be looking at how Detroit can be empowered from the community lens on up. And it's so much to think about. 2024 was one hell of a year when it comes to just life in general. A lot of things happen. A lot of things move fast from the macro level, internationally, definitely nationally and locally. When we think of some of the things that happened, we can be caught in the whirlwind of chasing the next story before we ground ourselves and think to ourselves, okay, how do we not react to what's happening and become proactive about how we build blocks and become developers inside of our community and building within our community? So as we talk about that, the first thing we need to really realize is what Detroit represents and stands for as far as I see it. Legacy Black Detroit. So Legacy Black Detroit is something that is near and dear to my heart. I look at it as a lot of the Detroit that existed after the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, the roots of a lot of Black folks that came here from the Great Migration and set their way into the grounds and soil here in the city of Detroit. So a lot of times people look at people coming here for the opportunity connected to manufacturing industry. And the industry here, when we think of that, is in automotive. And it's only fitting to be in General Baker Institute when we think about the way that our community engages in all dynamics of life, as many institutions through the lens of America are not designed and developed for the lens of Black empowerment, Black quality of life. So to get there, it's going to take creativity. It's going to take ingenuity. It's going to take the premise of what I believe is a lot of social capital and our value sets imposing upon systems that are not designed necessarily to get those things to us. So the grounds of coming here for opportunity is where many people came. And then reshaping what that opportunity looks like becomes the Black empowerment that many people look to, speak to, and have been inspired by across the world to today. But facing this now, we're looking at a lot of trials, tribulations, challenges, and triumphs that do come together for what Black Detroit is. So it's a lot of different things that I have listed. And I'm going to go through some of these prompts for you because I think that it'll give a grounding, not just for you, but for all of the panelists that will be speaking about what we need to think about moving into 2025 as we reflect on 2024. So the first thing that we need to recognize in the city of Detroit is this is still a Black city. So when I say a Black city, meaning the majority of the population here is Black. And being such a large municipality, that is shocking. Even the newest census figures that just were released this past December in a data set with like the 5 years of how you look at census data has Detroit at overwhelmingly above 75% Black. Figures were higher throughout my lifetime when we think about what Detroit does and represents in Blackness. So when I say shocking, it's shocking for people that have never come to Detroit, don't understand Detroit, and don't really know the workings of the leadership and how the empowerment hand exists in so many facets of culture. So that could be in artistry, that can be in politics, that's definitely in activism, that's even in literature. So many dynamics of what we think of Black life in America really intersect and run straight through the city of Detroit, because what has existed here from the families and the histories that have built these traditions. Hence, we have an audience of people here interested in what's our take on the state of Black Detroit. So right now, one of the biggest things going into 2025 is the possibility for Black leadership from the helm of the executive office of the mayor of the city of Detroit. For 12 years, Mike Duggan has been the executive of the city of Detroit. He stands as the first white mayor to assume that position. Now he's had that for 12 years. So that's 3 different terms since Coleman Young's reign as mayor. So that means from the 70s on, we have not seen white leadership from the helm of the executive position in Detroit. And this framework of what could happen in 2025 will only be something that I believe many people will look at as what will that reciprocity be within community, and also all of the advances that people look at as quote unquote what's happened in businesses. And I'm going to frame a lot of the empowerment and the development that has happened from a business lens to how that impacts, I think, all of Detroit in all aspects, even business included. So this possibility of Black leadership will definitely be taking a helm, but I really got to go back to Coleman's administration when we really look at what this happens. So when Black leadership assumes a position that is held by non-Black leadership, usually it is not resourced the same. And when I say usually, I mean that's from the aspects of if you run a Boys and Girls Club or if you even become a mayor of a city. So when I speak to the resourcing, it's not explicit. Usually it's implicit, and it's slowdowns and it's ways that things are tracked. So Mayor Coleman Young assuming the position of mayor in the city of Detroit, there was a mass exodus of a lot of retail spaces and a lot of other industry and businesses that said, no way, no bet can I be associated and founded in a city that has Black leadership. This created ways that a lot of things that even carry on and exist today of how do you bolster and have a tax base connected to this, meaning that you want to have businesses in the city to keep people motivated. One of the key points of Coleman Young's administration was saying that if you get people jobs, you'll get people to say. This is actually a lens that when we think of being in General Baker Institute, that many people in the community even then said that it's more than a job. It's more responsibility than just employment itself. But even those facets of life, when we look at what's happening today, ideas like the Downtown Development Authority, that is a group of 13 members that make decisions about how developments will be looking from the city of Detroit's downtown perspective. This was created in 1967 from the Coleman Young administration and supported by every member of the city council but Ken Cockrell Sr. at the time, because Ken Cockrell Sr. at the time even said that this will create a parallel of 2 Detroits. So if you understand what this Downtown Development Authority is, it is connected to tax incremental financing. So you're going to say, what is a TIF? Because people often talk about these TIFs. A TIF basically is saying that, okay, we're going to increment tax and then resell it as bonds. And not to sound too financial, even though I did go to Walsh College, I want to give it to you straight and clean. Basically, it is a city stepping up and saying, we're going to incentivize businesses by giving them tax breaks and also giving them money from tax dollars so that they can conduct business in the city of Detroit, specifically for downtown. So this development authority is a 13-member body that is appointed by the mayor of the city of Detroit, and it sits within the house of the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation. Now, right now, since 1967 to now, there are $298 million of outstanding bond debt, associated with also a $238 million of interest with that. So there's about $500 million of debt associated with this Downtown Development Authority. Some of these figures that I'm getting is actually from a research report that was delivered to Detroit City Council this year in September. It was Council President Mary Sheffield that asked for these numbers. So when we think about what this is, it's where does that balance come? So arguments are made that This is what was needed so that you could keep downtown where it is. You create projects like the Renaissance Center, or more recent, we can say Campus Martius. And you probably don't know this, where the Pistons and the Red Wings play are assets of the city of Detroit. Little Caesars Arena is an asset of the city of Detroit, meaning that Detroit taxpayers paid for that structure. And the Hudson site that will be unveiled, I'd expect probably sometime in 2025, is another one of those projects. A lot of the riverfront development, a lot of the assets that we look at as quote unquote making Detroit clean, and what we look at is sometimes saying this is gentrifying Detroit, are assets that were paid for by tax dollars from Detroiters that actually live there. So we need to stop and think of that for one moment first. Let's think of that. Tax dollars from Detroiters are going to attract businesses to come to Detroit so that you can attract a corporate base so we can conduct more commerce. And the idea is that jobs will be the hook to keep people there. And then we think of the quality of life of many Detroiters when this looks like that. So quality of life for many Detroiters, when we think of what that is, the average Detroiter from that same census data is somewhere at $39,575 annually. So when we look at that figure, and that's in a 5-year data set, and really in a 1-year data set, it's closer to like $35,000 a year. That $35,000 a year, when you do the mathematics, kind of comes out to about $16.50 an hour, because we're really looking at a lot of wage work throughout the city of Detroit. So you'll say to yourself, okay, why does that exist? The corporate argument is definitely that educational systems do not have those things in place and in play that empower the type of system where you can give people more money. But now let's compare that to Michigan, where the numbers in education are pretty much the same. Michiganders are looking at about $53,000. So if we put that in the hourly rate, that's maybe about $28 an hour, right? So now we're understanding the lens that exists. Other stressors that definitely hit many Detroiters is the car insurance. If you've never lived in Detroit, if you never had a Detroit address and you're thinking you're moving to Detroit, even for a lot of the people that came here for the shiny jobs are shocked to know that the average rate of insurance is about $675 a month for car insurance inside the city of Detroit. If you have a new vehicle, meaning that you need full coverage, you could pay up to $1,425 a month for car insurance. This is one heck of a stressor when we actually look at the scarcity of rental properties as well. And looking at average rent being maybe about $1,050 a month. So $1,050 a month plus about $1,400 a month. You combine that and you may be only getting about $2,800 a month. This creates a symptom that many people talk about when they think of any urban city, and that is crime, or hence what is now being looked at as public safety. So I look at crime as this is a symptom of social conditions. Some people look at crime as if it's a predisposition. Some people say it's because of educational systems. I look at things like $500 million that could have gone to schools, that could have gone to communities, that could have gone to other trainings, as this could be part of the reason why you're not having equity throughout communities and why so many people feel stacked upon and calcified into these conditions that can definitely make a person say, okay, crime is an option that makes a lot of sense, and it is the opportunity that is before me. So we need to really think about how we look at this as we move forward with the opportunities are before many Detroiters. So also, we get into housing. Housing is one of the things that many people talk about. And what does that look like? There is a strong initiative that's moved forward through Detroit City Council this past year. It's fast track financing for a lot of developers that are looking to develop affordable housing for different people throughout the city of Detroit and beyond, which is an act that I definitely applaud. But it's how do we define affordable and what are those means? And this, I think, is even really beyond the means of where City Council stands, and more so the concept of how we look at this. So often, like I tell you, I'm going to take you back to Algebra 2. I know you probably didn't like it. I definitely didn't necessarily like it. But now that I'm more so into business, I can really break this down so you can have a better understanding of it. So Algebra 2 thought process of what we think about this. You all remember this? There were 3 M's that we learned: mode, median, and mean. So the affordability is usually decided upon average median income of a sect that makes a decision upon what becomes affordable, right? So let's go back to that algebra 2. Mode, meaning that if you have a data set of many numbers and a number comes up multiple times, that is the mode, right? The median, you'll have a high point and a low point. And the point in the middle, that's our median. The mean is the average, right? So I'm fresh off a cohort that I was asked to attend through Dr. Raquel Hatter that works in the Human Center work with Kresge. And Dr. Hatter, I definitely have supported and was glad to be welcomed to meet Dr. Derek Hamilton that just took a financial post high up in the AFL-CIO. And I was just questioning him as an economist and a professor on economics, like I questioned many of my economics professors from Walsh, about why is average median income always the factor to determine what is affordable housing? And why not average mean income? And what he said, like a lot of these ideas and vehicles for economics at a time, is he said, well, during the late 70s and during the early 80s, these were the subsets really decided by HUD, because surprisingly, if you really don't look through the books, and General Baker and them and Mary Craver were definitely looking at it, a lot of the developments, even back then, on a federal basis, were really being subsidized through HUD financing. Because the thought process during the exodus to the suburbs is, hey, I got these apartment buildings. I still want to make money. I still want to keep these assets. How can I do this? You'll get subsidized through HUD, meaning those subsidies through HUD sustained different things of what will become affordable housing. So this becomes a stressor, and I stress upon that average median income, because even in the affordable program, what we're looking at is for a single person, $53,250 is considered low income in the city of Detroit, which I find very shocking, especially living on the block I live, in the neighborhood I live, interacting with the people that I live, and also understanding in these same data sets that actually 12.5% of Detroiters make $10,000 a year annually. So when you look at saying low income is $53,000 a year, and then you have basically, 12% of people that are making only $10,000 a year, we really need to think about what does housing look like and how do we quantify really getting affordable housing to these people that can be something that they can afford. And we can really keep Detroiters that want to be here, that have legacy here in the city of Detroit. These are things that we definitely need to take into consideration when we think of leadership and what moves forward. So in the lens of all of this, we also need to applaud a lot of the movements that have been grand for people. We think about the organizing of places like General Baker Institute. This is an initiative that started when we think of State of Black Detroit in Mama Akua House with myself and Dr. Yousef Bun Shakur, and even the work in Mama Akua House. So pouring into communities like this, inside of our communities, even welcoming, even the audience here and the audience online that you all are watching. So pouring in, we need to recognize our social capital and know that we have so much more of a voice than just a dollar. So when I say voice than just a dollar, especially at a time when local municipal elections are coming about, that's what's needed. Because another one of those shocking figures are, you would be surprised to know the amount of people that have divested from voting because they feel as though it's not been equitable for them, which is an argument that I completely understand. So it shocks a lot of people to say, how can you be a person that works in community and understand apathy? And then I say, I open up my front door, I look across my street, I look at the people I know, I look at the opportunities they have, I look at the way that things have been invested in, and also the way that some leaders are turning now to foundations and philanthropy as ways to provide assets that are essential assets for community, even though these assets should be provided through governments. That same government that one issue has been pervasive for so long, and that's the overassessment of taxes for Detroiters. So along with dealing with high car insurance, dealing with definitely the lack of opportunity for job sustainability and jobs that will pay what is considered a living wage in Michigan, we're also overassessed if you do own property here in Detroit for taxes. This was definitely one of the landmark cases that has so many homeowners saying that, okay, if I was overassessed for all of these years, why can't I get paid back? And this is an argument that Conrad Mallett Jr. has said completely as corporate counsel for the city of Detroit, that means the attorney for the city of Detroit, you cannot be paid back because it'll be illegal and it'll break the Michigan charter. And the elephant in the room of that, you got to be smart when attorneys are talking. If you can't pay me back for the money that I'm owed, how could you take the money that wasn't yours in the first place, right? We got to really think about things like this as we frame why so many people say this system is not necessarily a system where equity can be balanced. So we creatively, I think, need to build power sets, and we need to bring ideas to life where we can be empowered to push agendas ourselves and then not necessarily be looking for solutions from the outside in. They definitely need to be from the inside out, the do-it-ourself model. So victories like the Detroit People's Food Co-op and really the journey of what was created with that are the type of victories that we need to think about. You know, the work that has been done with what we do with Detroit is different. The Collard Green Cook-Off, intersecting so many things of urban agriculture, culinary arts, and really community and being familial. That is key. So as we think about what these keys are to what empowerment can be, we definitely need to look at where those assets can lie inside of our communities as opposed to outside of our communities, right? So with all of that being said, welcome to State of Black Detroit 2024. And the first person I got up is definitely somebody that's going to speak about a lot of what's going to happen in the 2025. That's Dr. Yousef Bun Shakur. As he comes, definitely welcome you. As you all will see some people. Y'all can definitely give a round of applause. Got some people in here. All right. All right. What's going on?
What's up, good brother?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. So we've done this for a couple years now. I know we setting our cameras and everything. We've been doing this for, like I say, since the pandemic. So before we even get to the questions and everything, I want to thank you so much for helping with this effort. Yusef, actually, even though being a native son, when we talk about being in Detroit, doesn't speak a whole lot in Detroit because of some of those same things when we think of thought process and energy. So even leading up to it, I was like, yo, Yusef, I want you to speak and be a part of this. And this kind of just started on the fly of bringing out some equipment. Now it's like I got more of a team. We got more of a production, bringing Carolyn in effect, General Baker Institute. So thank you so much for being a part of this.
Oh, no problem, brother. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. So I know this kind of takes you out of Zone 8 because we used to be in at Mama Akua House. And if people don't know Zone 8, I'm a Northwestern guy. So definitely it's a lot of energy that's connected over there. But now here in this space, and you brought up this space. Mm-hmm. What was it for you to say that General Baker Institute was like, hey, let's take it to General Baker Institute?
Well, General Baker Institute is family. Most people don't know that General Baker and Marion Kramer, I met almost 19 years ago in Highland Park. I was an assistant head teacher, and their grandbabies, I taught their grandbabies.
Wow.
It felt like a whole nother lifetime ago. Obvious, through reading and things, I was familiar with the League of Black Revolutionary Workers, General Baker to some degree, but putting face to the history that I read, and there was like a disconnect. And so when I met General Baker in person, it was this gentle giant, and we was doing some like organizing around a hiring, and I was working where we was organizing against, and he was like, young brother, whatever you need, I'm with you. And he never said who he was, just his spirit spoke for him. And then later on, I figured I made the connection. I was like, wow. And I remember one time, Marion Kramer was on when they used to be on the Highland Park show. Mm-hmm. She just letting it rip.
Yes.
And it was just funny to me because again, I'm around them every day. But that part when they came and picked up their grandbabies, it's not that they hit it. It was just it's who they was. But when you look at activism or like I always say, every revolutionary is an activist, organizer, and advocate, but not every advocate, organizer, and activist is a revolutionary. Mm-hmm. And the point I make in that is you can be a revolutionary, but you have to figure out how to relate to people. You relate to people either through activism, through organizing, or because sometimes we get caught up in our own ideas. Revolutionaries and that we can be arrogant in our thinking, and we have to figure out how to relate to people. And I learned that through the General Baker Institute in terms of the foundation.
Yeah. And definitely an archival space of capturing a lot of those stories, those lessons, and how things are so empowered here. That's been very key. So, start it off. What insights from 2024 are you most eager to carry forward in 2025? And how will these shape your continued work in building just and beloved communities?
I mean, 2024 has been interesting for me. And let me speak to like today. I'm just speaking as Yusef, Joseph. Those who know. Those who don't know, they'll find out. JoJo. Uh, so like Detroit is an interesting place, particularly Black Detroit. Like, how often do we even associate Detroit as Black Detroit? You know, we name it, we claim it in a way that we honor ourselves. We don't, because we've been positioned to not look at ourselves as the most blackest city in America, and the fact that we have a white a white mayor, as you just mentioned. He the first time he got elected, it was on the right end, and the first time probably in the history of the city that someone could had achieved that. So many blows has happened, like a lot of stuff that you talked about, and you kind of alluded to it. There's 40% of people who live in poverty in this city. I've heard recently two Black men describe that this narrative of the turnaround in Detroit. But when you drive through your neighborhood, through my neighborhood, Dexter, Linwood, et cetera, there's no fucking turnaround. People have been left to figure it out. And I'm not speaking as a pessimistic type of person, but just calling reality. But when you dig deep in within those numbers, 70% of the households are ran by Black women.
Yes.
I repeat, 70% of the households are ran by Black women. I'll be 52 in February 15th. So all my life, Black women has been at the forefront of Black households. You talk about the language of single Black mothers who raised most of all of us in this city. And the point I'm making is, like, we have not addressed that, not as a deficit. We have not addressed it where Black women has, and turned it into a positive, because they've stood in the gaps. They stood at the margins and figured out when no one else had. So when you look at you ask me what lessons, that is a lesson that I will carry with me, because my superpower comes from the fact that I was born to a Black woman.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. So, in the same arc, next question. Detroiters face stark wage gaps compared to the state average. In an environment with limited job opportunities and high living costs, how do you envision communities organizing to create economic opportunities and advocate for fair wages?
Well, it's not necessarily how I envision. I mean, we live in this world where everybody has a platform, and I tend to fight for having an individual platform, because it's just so sickening that individuals, because it promotes this capitalist culture of individualism. Even though I may be right in my thinking, in reality, it takes a collective. It takes all of us to be able to contribute and to define what that reality look like. Fundamentally, we can't move nowhere economically without overstanding the social and political dynamics. So that's, when we did the commercial, I said the personal is political and the political is personal. And what I mean by that is, and it's not about electoral politics. Political is in terms of power. We do not have the power to determine our own destiny in terms of economically and socially. We go up 2 miles north from Livernois, you have a Black economic district. However, again, the 40% folks who live in poverty can't even fucking shop over there. I'm not shitting on it, but again, that's a reality. But we use the language inclusive, but how inclusive are we to ourselves, to the Black poor? Democracy should not be measured by those who have, but by those who don't. And we can understand that. That's how we flip it. But again, the conversation we should be asking ourselves: are we having Are we having a Black liberation conversation, or are we having a nonprofit conversation, or are we having just an everyday conversation? For me, it's a Black liberation conversation. So it's always looking at the people and looking at the people and figuring out the ideas. Because the people may not have certain degrees or certain letters behind their name, we may not consider them educated, but they are educated.
Mhm.
They're educated from their experiences. Their experiences teaches them how to create a just and beloved community because they're the ones who haven't lived in one. That's why we need one, right? So why? What sense does it make to me to continue to go to those who supposedly live in a just community, but because of how this society operates, the privilege of that grants them the opportunity to impose on me, on what a society looks like. Like we're not against community development. We're against community development continue to be opposed upon us, which continue to value our humanity. I was a human being. I was smart long before I earned my PhD. I was a human being. I was smart long before I got accepted to the University of Michigan. My mother told me when I was a little boy, you can be the president of this country. That she was bold enough to make that statement, to dream, to the audacity. And it was in the prison cell that I lived up to that expectation by rebuilding and transforming my mind to first understand that we need a beloved and just community.
Definitely. Detroit has significant outside investment. And this speaks to exactly what you were just speaking to, often benefiting the non residents, while homeowners and locals bear high insurance and tax burdens. In your experience, how can we shift this dynamic so that residents benefit from the city's resources more?
Well, we keep getting sold out. We keep getting sold out by politicians. We keep getting sold out by preachers, businesses. I mean, people that look like us. Some of them mean well, but this is where, again, like we talk about education. We're all educated, but do we all have the same interests from the education that we have?
Mhm.
And this is where, again, within Black folks, there's a class dynamic. And this class is continuing to perpetuate this division. And where, oh, Khary, because how could you open up a podcast house on the block that you lived on? How dare you? How dare you open up a community house on Zone 8 on Ferry Park, where is no, when I come down there at nighttime, there's no street lights. Is that your fault? That's my fault? No. But the fact that that community, that neighborhood still matters. But it matters because we grew up over there, and we have such an attachment and commitment that people look at us and say that we're fools. But the fools are the ones that continue to give up on us and give up on our community when we was raised not to give up on ourselves. So when you look at the decisions that are being made, they're being made from an interest level. I mean Henry Ford Hospital, the things that they've done and continue to do in my community. I'll say it and I keep saying it until I can't say it no more. Motown, we all love Motown. Motown is in the business gentrification. Most of these businesses in Detroit are in the business of gentrification. Most of these politicians that ran that was going to run is in the business of gentrification. Most of these politicians are in the business of serving white interest elite. So this is why we have the decision that we have, and we can't continue to go for the okie doke. I mean, the Alabama bus boycott was powerful because the people said no more. We give credit to Martin Luther King, but Martin Luther King ain't shit without the people. It wasn't one man. It wasn't just Rosa Parks. It was the collective effort of the people that was able to shut down a whole fucking city. So imagine what we can do if we decide to come together from off our individual islands. And we all ain't got to like each other. Because there's some days I don't like my own motherfucking self. However, I can still respect you. And this is where it gets down to not like-minded, but like value. But because of the nonprofit industrial complex and the corporate complexes that determine who our leaders are. I mean, you and I had a conversation. You said you hadn't seen buck dance or buck breaking in real life because they're very strategic. That's why you don't see me at most shit, because I know what my value is. I remember somebody called me when Bike was running, and like, we want you to be in the audience. So what you're telling me, you want the nigga that been in the penitentiary, the nigga got the street credibility. You just want me to sit at the table, not say nothing. Now. That's what you want me to do. I'm more valuable than that. We're more valuable to continue to allow people to just sell us a fucking pipe dream.
Many families experience stress that can lead to mental health challenges and even crime. What strategies have you found most effective for addressing these root stressors and creating healthier communal environments?
General Baker Institute, the Mama Cool Community House. Detroit is different. What I mean by that is like we're dealing with those individuals. When I say those individuals, we're situated in community. We're situated in neighborhoods that we interact with folks on that level, because this is why the person is political. Like we want to go help and save somebody, but we ain't even helped to save our own fucking self yet. You can't change the world until you change yourself, and that is a constant struggle. And I've been reminded recently, some of my little homeboys, they come in to the Mama Courthouse, and they come in religiously, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And one of them came in, he's like, man, I feel like I'm a big hypocrite. I'm like, what's going on, man? He's like, man, I'm talking about changing, but I'm selling dope. Like, all right, like, you ain't got to be so hard on yourself, though. Like, change just don't happen overnight. But the beauty of it was the fact that he felt comfortable enough to be vulnerable with me. He kept me. I didn't go drag him in. Let's sit down and talk. He walked in and talked, and he been seeking it out every day. But just imagine how many others are looking for the opportunity to share like that. But if we created more opportunity like this, the more that we can create opportunities for change within our community. But that change is something that we constantly find ourselves up against, because change happens every day in some form or some fashion. But also we as individuals are get trapped in the island because of the work we do. Like they see the glitter, they see the platform, but they don't see what's behind it. We make it look easy. Again, when you buy all this equipment and every day you bringing it out your house, there's possibility a little homie watching you. It's a little possibility a homie that no plotting on you, no plotting on the Mama Cool House, but we still open that motherfucker up every day. We still show up every day because we know what we mean to our community, what we mean even to that person who are a danger as a detriment to us, but we still love them regardless. Because we live in this Black utopia, this perfect imaginary world. Because we're functioning with W. Du Bois talk about this double consciousness. We know we get fucked over every day by America, but we're still trying to be Americans. Because the alternative we have not built sustainable. It's not sustainable, not yet. Because we're those who like Wendell, use Wendell, right? There's no shot at Wendell, right? The Wendell has the Wendell. I say Wendell Anthony. The Wendell Anthony was known for doing work where,
right on Dexter, Linwood,
Dexter, yeah,
Trailblazer,
right, or doing YBI. He had an African name during that time, right? And I'm not saying like. Again, I'm a co-executive director of a nonprofit now. I wasn't my plans. That wasn't my dream job. It happened. My point is, how do we not lose connection? How do we stay? Because when Wendell leaves, who took his place? When Yusef, Joseph leaves, who takes his place? Khary leaves, because that work still has to happen. And that requires a strategy. And not just duplicate, because I see what you're doing, I'm duplicating what you're doing. And when I duplicate what you're doing, now we become in a place of competition. We're going after the same resources.
Which that actually goes right into the next discussion. Question. When communities turn inward and see one another as adversaries rather than collaborators, how do you suggest we move beyond internal conflict and build solidarity from within?
That's a tricky question. I mean, the answer is it's predicated on transformation. Like many of us, we adopt. We adopt a a Black liberation position. We adopt a Pan-African position. We adopt a Black feminist position. But my question is, do you really believe that shit in your heart? Like, do you really believe that in your soul? Like when I was in the penitentiary, I saw Moors, I saw Melanics, I saw Nation of Islam, I saw Sunni Muslim, and me and my best friend, we in a hole, and we talking like, man, if we either one of us ever decide to join one of these groups, we got to be serious. Because when you come from where we come from, what's get respected is being honest and being real. And when you trying to like you saying one thing but doing the opposite, like you killing your own fucking credibility. And so this is not nothing new. This has happened since the fucking beginning of time. Oh, I like your what they say. I like your swag, right? Your swag drawing attention. So what the fuck I do? I go copy your swag because I want the same attention that you got. But that's not transformation. That's not creating your own path where the paths can connect authentically. You and I have been knowing each other over 10, 12 years. Right? Most people would think like, we talk every day. We have lunch meals, and we don't. But if I call you, you'll rearrange your schedule for me. If you call me, I'll rearrange my schedule for you. Why? Because there's a certain love there. There's a certain respect there that's rooted in a value system. And but when we do talk, how long we're on the phone no more than an hour, 2. I mean, you know, they say women are chatty. I think we more chatty than them on Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah.
But all those conversations are not like we don't agree, right? But those are battlegrounds to get better. So when I see you as my brother. And you see me as your brother, and so there's no room for competition, even though we don't see the world the same. But I know we're trying to get to the same destination, so I need you. And needing you pushes me to want to be your brother.
Yeah, it's in that relationship. You released a documentary this year that I helped with the editing, and just seeing more so that piece and really expanding upon dedicating that to your mother,
right?
Who I had a relationship with as well, and seeing that manifest in that relationship. I don't know. Oftentimes, if people think that everything needs to be so competitive, as oftentimes competing towards bettering ourselves, I believe is where we strive and thrive. So thank you so much in even sharing for this, because this is what it is because of the extension of the relationship and friendship that has been built and the ways that we see pouring into our community.
Right.
So as we get to a close, because I have a lot more questions, but I'm going to only hit you with a couple more now. So let's see. Here we go. Amidst systemic inequities and emotional strain, how can individuals and groups ground themselves in a sense of purpose, cultural identity, and spirituality or communal resilience? More so, how do you fill that cup up and keep going? Because at times the odds can be crazy lean. How you think it looks at being here in Detroit, dealing with Black Detroit, looking at the opportunities that are abundant here versus other places. It can be overwhelming. So how do you fill that cup?
Well, being Black in America is overwhelming. And that overwhelmingness shows itself up in relationships. That overwhelmingness shows itself up when you're in the fucking shower, wherever, right? In the grocery store. It gives me the courage. It gives me the hope to continue. But also, it teaches me that I can't hear what I'm afraid to confront. And there's a level of anti-Blackness that exists in this world that we embrace. And one thing, if nobody listens, shit I say, please listen to this, that we have to get away from, well, if that happened to a white person or happened to a white community, it'll be different. And we're not realizing we're legitimizing anti-Blackness. We're measuring ourselves against what white people will do or what will happen to white people.
Mm-hmm.
And I get the essence, but that's a challenge that we have to take upon ourselves to reconfigure how we approach that. And we have to stop saying, I don't want to see another slave movie. I don't want to see another block. We're the only people in this country that don't know who we are. Every fucking group of people in this world has been conquered, has been abused in some form or some fashion. We were snatched away from the titty of Africa, and we had to suck on another titty here in America. Excuse my language. But the explicitity I'm trying to make is that we're still searching for that milk to nurture ourselves, to be our fuel humanity. And to do that, we had to go through the pain to come out on the other side of healing ourselves. So imagine our ancestors who came from different tribes, who found themselves on that one boat, who who spoke multiple different languages, became out one people. Imagine what we can do. We all speak the same fucking language. But you from Linwood, I'm from Zone 8. She from Dexter. And we're allowing these formalities to split us. But also, I see you on TV. Like, oh shit, no, he's a superstar, so I want to be a superstar. But next week they come up with another superstar. Like, well, why are we doing this? What's the purpose? I mean, the culture is about sustainability. Hip hop is not a culture; it is a subculture. It is a fucking subculture that was born out of the streets. I mean, it's so interesting. Like, I hear the word culture now. Man, it was for the culture. It's for the culture. That shit, I cringe when I hear it. Because if the culture is legit, then you saying it's legit that we was raised by bitches. If the culture is legit, then you saying it's okay to go and break in your house, nigga, because that's what niggas do. Right? And where did niggas come from? Again, I don't have to go there, but I mean, I need to go there to get us where we need to go to. Because I was that guy that said, man, I don't want to hear that black shit. But it was that black shit that saved my life. To go back in my neighborhood where the statistic says either I'm going to get killed or go back to prison. On January 3rd, 2025, I'll be out of prison 24 years. And so to understand culture is created out of community. And there's a gentleman in my neighborhood. On most days he don't like me, and most days I don't like him. But there's a genuine respect. And he taught me a lesson just recently. And the lesson was because even though I don't like you some days, Yusef, I value you. And if something happens to you, the devastation on our community is going to be tremendous. So I needed to teach you this lesson to help you remain true to who you are. Because my greatest fight is me. If anybody know me, I'm not scared of nothing. Because that's how my mama raised me to be. Right? So if you disrespect me, I'm going to protect myself. Right? And that's just, but I have to figure out how to manage that. So my gift and my curse is my passion. It is a gift and a curse. But so going back to your question around mental health, how do we create spaces within our community to share these things, to be a reinforcement where it doesn't become a weapon against us? Like someone asked me recently, am I part of your community or I'm part of your village? Some days I don't know who my village is, just to be honest, because I don't know who to trust. Because most folks, when they deal with Yusef, they dealing with the brand. They dealing with the personality, not the person. Because the person is shy. The person is quiet. The person can be very social awkward at times. Just being honest. And most folks are like, what the fuck? I thought you was a guy. Like, no, that's not me. And I don't put on no act. I just do this part because that's the game banger in me. that's fighting for its community, that says things that other people are afraid to say sometimes. But even then, I have to learn that I can't always do that because it's not my job. It's it's a collective job to be able to fight for our communities and do what's right for our people. And that's what the culture should be about.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Please give a round of applause for Dr. Yousef Bun Shakur, giving a grounding, giving us a grounding for State of Black Detroit 2024. All right, next up, we're changing the order some because the brother is, I believe, has another obligation, but this is someone that we definitely want to uplift. And this now presenting will be Dr. Jesse Brown. Dr. Jesse Brown from the Holistic Training Institute. Dr. Brown's work in healing is definitely well known. Someone that has brought so many people here when it comes to a way of holistic healing and what can be natural paths into what's needed in our community. So with that, I want to make sure this camera is set. So let's get this camera set for Dr. Brown. And when we get this camera set for Dr. Brown, we're going to begin with some questions. And thank you so much for being a part of State of Black Detroit. Again, this is year 2 for you. All right. I just zoom out some. Everybody in live stream world, what's going on? I'm not even seeing the comments this year, but hopefully you all are commenting, sharing, liking, and subscribing to Detroit is Different. So much more will be coming with Detroit is Different. And actually, Dr. Brown's already reached out saying, like, we got to do more. We got to do more. So more will come, my brother. With that being said, Dr. Brown, how are you today?
Excellent. Glad to be here another year and proud of the work that Detroit is Different is doing.
Thank you.
We had a long interview and we've been doing things, but there's so much more that we can do about the state of Black health in Detroit.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And this year I'm prompting with some questions. So first, before we even get to the questions, let's just get to you. Give an introduction. Like most people, we're shocked at the age. I see you cut the locks. So now you really looking like you about to hit the hoop court and hit a crossover on everybody, man.
Okay. Well, let's see. Well, I'm a Detroiter. And it was really through, I'll say, a minister in Detroit who first introduced me to health and wellness. You know, my first class was in healing and pain therapy, and then with a chiropractor and naturopath, Dr. Frank and Mother Elizabeth Bracey, is some people that have passed who influenced and facilitated the connection between our Southern roots, our African roots, from Africa to the Americas, in terms of our herbal knowledge, our homeopathic knowledge, in terms of our healing ourselves. And somewhere along the way, we got off the path with that. So when I was introduced to people like Brother Dick Gregory and so many others who were talking about health and wellness and the activities that were going on in the 70s and and from what I learned, I had to pursue it. Started Detroit Holistic Center on Dexter and Claremont in 1987.
We consider that Dexter and Joy Road, but yeah.
Or Dexter and Joy Road. Yeah. 1 mile and almost exactly 20 years from the 1967 rebellion. Mm-hmm. A new type of rebellion began.
And definitely you could check the archives of Detroit is Different, and such a rich history in that. Thank you for the grounding. And now let's get into some of these questions. This year has taken a mental toll on many. Yeah. From your perspective, what holistic methods can individuals use to recenter themselves and stay prepared for forces beyond their control?
The first thing we can do is learn about our bodies and what we can take personal responsibility for. You know, the vision and the mission of the Holistic Training Institute that I founded over 20 years ago was to train healers in every home. And again, those roots that were started so long ago, our original method of healing was for people to take care of themselves and their villages, their families. There was healers in every community. And even when I was coming up, it wasn't just my mother, but it was other people in the community that knew what to do if something happened. I mean, short of something traumatic like getting hit by an automobile or getting shot by a gun or something like that. But we got away from so much of that for modern convenience, for something that we may have thought is newer or better. And the answer is really going back to the root of our roots, understanding our bodies, understanding nature, understanding what builds us up and what tears us down.
So with that, can you give a little bit of a relationship for the physical empowering the mental?
Yeah, you can't have good mental health unless you have physical health. Many of the problems that we see, many of the challenges, many of the stresses that you were talking about earlier are because we're not utilizing our bodies. We're not feeding our bodies like they need to be fed, and we're not utilizing our bodies the way they need to be used. Okay, if you look at sports and especially sports, we're excelling in everything. You know, basketball, football, track and field, and all types of things wouldn't be the same without
Black
people
folks.
of Africa, without Black folks. Okay, and we're relatively stagnant in Detroit and in society. Our health outcomes. We're African Americans in Detroit have a life expectancy 10 years less than whites. Why is that? Why would the strongest people that came to the Americas be the sickest, get the sickest soonest, and die faster? We're out of our environment. One, we're homesick because this isn't our natural environment, and then two, we haven't really adapted. We drink more Cavassier here than any place else in the world, right? It's what we're eating, what we're drinking, what we're not doing with our bodies. It's the choices that we make. We want to look good, and we prioritize that over feeling good. Okay, and the ways that we choose to feel good are not good for us.
In moments of struggle, confusion, or loss, how do you maintain your commitment to a holistic lifestyle? And what practices have proven most helpful for your own healing journey?
Okay, plant-based diet. Plant-based diet. If it comes from a plant, I eat it. If it's processed in a plant, I avoid it. You know, most of what we eat, the standard American diet, the African American diet, is processed, it's sugar, it's not food. And so it's killing us, but we're somehow okay with that. You know, our culture, what's supported, what's encouraged is eating more, drink more. What, soon we're gonna have a new year. And what are people going to do? They're going to go home, they're going to drink, and they're going to smoke and do all these things. And the same things they do on January 1st, the same things they're going to do on probably most weekends for the rest of the year. And some people during the week. And it's killing us. So what do? One, I'm in the gym or outside running practically every day, 6, sometimes 7 days a week. Okay. We can move a lot more than we do, and that's going to decrease the mental stress. And for example, so when I run, the more active I am, I can't do that other stuff. I can't fuel on alcohol and perform the way that I do. I run marathon. You probably know I run marathons, half marathons. I started at 51, and I'm faster at 68 than I was at 51. Okay, but the belief is that we're getting old. Okay, 30 years old and 40 years old, and that's old in middle age, and we have an expectation that people are not going to perform as they mature, instead of just looking at it as maturing and realizing that the body is the only machine that gets better with use, not worse. So we're using it worse. We take better care. We know more about our cars and how to take care of our homes and our clothes than we do our bodies. And that's the mistake. We're not investing in health. We're putting our money in all types of other things. If we're going to create, it's one thing to create what we say is generational wealth. We need to create generational health. We need to do something that's going to impact future generations. Our young people are getting sicker sooner. We have the rates of diabetes and obesity and heart disease is starting much younger, and abuse of all types of things.
So with that, another asset that's definitely clear, near, and dear to Detroiter is water. Right?
Absolutely.
Water scarcity and pollution affect overall wellness.
Yeah.
Definitely the campaign for water affordability. Shout out to We the People. Water for everybody.
Yeah.
How can communities rally together to ensure clean water access for everyone? And why do you see this as a crucial step in holistic health?
Well, water is essential. Next to air, water is our most valuable nutrient, and water is part and parcel to all the plant life and everything that we consume. Okay, so water is fundamental. I don't know that I have the answer for how do we ensure water
is accessible and affordable.
Yeah, the accessibility. I don't know that I have those answers. But I believe that one answer is that one, we recognize it as being important and essential. If you ask the average person how much water do they drink, okay. Now, if you ask people, is water important, they're going to say yeah, right? I think universally they're going to say yeah. If you ask them how much do they drink, they don't have a container like you do. They're probably they're not consuming it as they should. They're drinking all types of other things. So one, we have to see it as important. Two, then a priority. I mean, if we look at what we spend on water compared to what we spend on other things, we spend a lot more money on other stuff that isn't water. Okay, that has a small percentage of water in it than the other things. So I don't have all the answers, but we can do better individually, and then maybe something else will come out of that politically.
From your vantage point,
yeah,
in what ways have you seen the Black community embrace holistic health most strongly? Okay. And what makes those approaches so effective? Meaning that we have embraced certain aspects of this. And what is it? Okay. Why? What's that thought process?
Okay, 1987, when I started Detroit Holistic Center, my people told me it wasn't going to last. I was on Dexter Joy Road. Okay, in the hood. It's like, okay, you're in the hood. The business was here. You didn't do, Black people aren't into colonics and all this sort of thing. And there was a part of me that was afraid because of that, because I was like, okay, I'm not, this is going to fail. I'm setting myself up for failure. But what happened is in 5 years, we outgrew that space. And then probably tripled it. Yeah, at least triple that on Grand River over the next 27 years. Okay. So we are ready, willing, and able to embrace health and wellness. It's just, it needs to be taught. We need to, I say, preserve, protect, promote, and pass it along.
So now I guess I got to get a little bit more specific. During
Okay.
that time at the Institute, when it was a physical space, what were the products? What were the
Okay.
trainings? What did people often connect with most that got them in as a gateway?
Okay. Well, weight loss and cleansing. That was at the essence of what we were doing. A lot of colon hydrotherapy, or people would say colonics. People could fundamentally understand that of all the things that we're doing, they weren't good for our bodies. We need to undo some of that. And there's a lot of constipation, a lot of digestive problems in our community. So one, the colon hydrotherapy, above all else, we had other services as well. Products that help to cleanse our blood, liver, kidneys, etc. Some herbal products primarily.
And what do
Yeah.
you think it was about those cleanses that connected most?
Oh, because people felt, most people will feel better immediately, and other people will feel better gradually over time.
Mm.
One of the fundamental problems in our society is we're not just sick, we're being poisoned. And unless you detoxify, unless you get the poisons out, so it's at least a twofold process. And that's one, when people are going through a cleanse, they're not putting more poisons in. And secondly, they're getting poisons out. So when people end up detoxifying and saying, I think more clearly, I see more clearly, I have more energy, my sexual stamina is better, my body is slimmer, so when people are looking better, feeling better, performing better, when things in their life start to change, and even their attitude and perspective changes, because partly because they make that personal choice, and the other is because they're going through a process and they're being guided through a process, then there's something dynamic that really happens there. It's a different type of baptism. It's a transformation that occurs, and utilizing water. The people who went through the program, the people who would really take it on, got great benefits.
With that being said, thank you so much, Dr. Brown. Thank you so much, Dr. Brown. I know that we're looking at time. Had a couple more questions for you that were listed, but what would you like to share in a close? What would you?
What I like to share? Well, and again, I'm going to come back to this. It's the answer to our health problems and the health disparities that exist is not in the hospitals and the clinics, and not in the system that we have it today. They're just building more cancer clinics and more treatment centers, and there's multi-billions of dollars is being spent there. I think over $1 trillion actually. The answer is in our homes, in our families, in our kitchens. It's in people understanding how to take care of this body temple, extending that to their family and then the community. Okay, if we turn that around, we're going to turn things around economically as well. When we saw a decline in the health and in the wealth in our communities with the advent of drugs and fast foods and these other things, we could turn that around to rebuild our communities and heal the ills that we have. So we're not just healing the body, we're healing our community in all dimensions. So I'd like to, for those people who want to take this path, because I'm doing the work that I can do while I'm here. I knew Dr. Sebi, he passed, and so many of our healers have passed along without necessarily leaving a legacy. The Holistic Training Institute is here to leave a legacy for future generations, so we can continue on, so we can learn what to do and keep this going. I know I won't be here forever, but some people who are here will be here longer than me. So www.holistictraininginstitute.com. And I also started a community called the Holistic Wellness Collective on a platform called school. We've got to institutionalize this so that it
Carries on.
carries on and leaves a legacy.
Well, thank you so much. And
All right.
Dr. Sebi, Layla Africa, if everybody, you should have
yes.
Layla Africa's book, but brought them here multiple times, even Dick Gregory. That's literally kind of how the business started. A lot of information from Dr. Jesse Brown, and really just knowing that that connection is a part of that whole scope of the state of Black Detroit in health. And also knowing that I guess like the cleanses is something that we're going to and connecting to. Go to the Institute and find other places. There are more spaces with more health instruments. And with that, we're definitely thinking of what this is. This is media and messaging. So I welcome my sister, one of my closest in a lot of work and a lot of projects, and also just someone that I connect with and learn so much from in another Northwestern coat. We welcome Piper Carter to State of Black Detroit 2024. My Piper, as I always say. And Piper's been rocking the cream, rocking the white since the passing of the Mama Piper for so long in that process, and looking cool and fly. Let's see. Let's make sure Piper's camera is all set as we get her questions ready. So let's see here. Let's see.
What's up, Khary, Frazier?
What's going on, Piper?
What up, though, Detroit?
Let's see.
Almost Happy New Year.
All right. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
We getting our camera.
So
straight.
I'm going to give my disclaimer because y'all know I can get
Disclaimer.
emotional and go off the rails.
My Piper.
So I had to write most of my answers down.
Okay.
Only because, like, you know, living through a lot of this is very traumatic. And then you get emotional and then you start thinking about this and that and that and that. So I said, you know what, let me just stick to the points because we only got so much time.
We gonna get all these questions in.
Okay. So, oh, and then the first I want to say shouts out to the Baker Center and for hosting us. So give lots of love to the whole Baker Center. Shouts out to Carolyn and the crew. You know, I think it's very important that we're here. I really appreciate it, especially coming from this legacy. So me and Carolyn have an inside joke. We always say we're cousins.
Yes.
And we're community cousins because my uncle, rest in peace, Baba Ibn Pori Pitts, who was a community leader and an artist, was also one of the co-founders of League of Revolutionary Black Workers, Republic of New Africa. So that's the legacy that I grew up in. You know, me and you went to Nataki Taliba. You know, shouts out to the African Center Education. So that's the lens and like the scope of which I want to honor and come to, you know, this work with. So yeah.
Okay. Also,
and 12th Street. We both, you know, what's up, 12th Street? Me and Khary from 12.
Yes.
I'm not going to throw up no signs.
Hilarious. All right. So with that being said, also in the shout out world, shout out to Buddha Foods. He provided, as you're talking about food and sustenance. It is some great vegan gumbo. As we know, Buddha's gumbo is amazing. That is here for the people that are here. You can get that. Even crew. This would be the time to possibly.
Yeah. Oh, and shouts out to the whole Detroit is Different crew. Y'all look amazing. Got your shirts on, doing great, powerful work. So this is an amazing crew, y'all. Y'all have no idea. These people are incredible.
All right. So let's kick this off.
Yes, sir.
From the national election of 2024 to Detroit's upcoming 2025 local elections, what lessons about media, understanding, and listening should our community carry forward?
So something that I did, Khary, you know me, I'm Aquarius. I really don't mean to be like a, you know, rebel or nothing like that. But what I did was I kind of reframed a lot of the questions. And the reason I did that,
I don't mind it.
No, let me say this about that. It's just because
before you even go. This is me and Piper. Y'all are like almost getting in a phone conversation. We're always like, Piper this, Piper that. She'll be like, Khary this, Khary that. So yeah, most definitely.
So I'm gonna tell you why I reframed the question. I reframed the question because I live in District 7. And if people know about the city council districts, District 7 is the largest physical area that's encapsulated in a district. Physically, we have the highest number of teenagers. We also have the lowest voter turnout rate, right? And I know these things because I'm active in my community. I have a block club. And just through speaking with neighbors, listening to people, shouts out to Mama Theo, the Hood Research Fam that's part of District 7. And, I live in Barton McFarland. And I'm saying all that to say those things are very important because the information that I'm sharing comes from real sources, meaning people that have lived in the community for over 50 years and have worked in the community. So listening to people and the people having been divested from it's really important to be sensitive to the fact that people are actively and intentionally not participating in the electoral process, not because they don't believe in their own power, not because they're stupid or ignorant, which is what the media would teach you, but because in practice, they have been aggressed upon in a way to where it's ineffective for them to even go participate because they had to suffer from something called the emergency management. And what happened in Detroit, if you don't know anything about emergency management, in short, is financial martial law. And what happened during the so-called economic crisis that happened, I say so-called because all economic crises and all crises and political crises are manufactured. But but with that, on the so-called economic crisis that happened, different cities, different states received what was called an emergency management. We know the devastation of the impact of emergency management on a federal scale because we have all witnessed, experienced, and seen the horrors of the Flint water crisis. And so that is the impact of what happens when decisions that impact people are bottom lined. And so living in a community that that was very heavily impacted by the emergency management situation where our city officials had their decisions bottom line. So basically what happened, you voted, right? So you would vote for this person. This person technically sits in a seat, but the decisions that they were put in place to make, they're not even empowered to make because there's another person that's called an emergency manager that has been put in place to actually override those decisions and make the decisions of the federal government. So that's important to understand because when we talk about democracy, we talk about power, that's the people's power actually being taken away from them. And so when we blame citizens and say, well, you don't vote, but we hear people say back to us, well, it don't matter what them people do because they're going to do what they're going to do anyway. They're not wrong. And when we go to them and we have fake candidates or candidates that don't represent us or candidates who don't know anything about us or candidates who are supposed to be from the community but play the role of the enemy because they do the bidding of the enemy, then they're not only class enemies, they're like just basic enemies to our very existence. And so yeah, it doesn't matter. They're right. It doesn't matter when they vote because the people are going to do what they're going to do anyway. So how do we then try to lie to them and tell them that it's important for them to vote because our ancestors died for that right? But their ancestors didn't die for them to be able to put somebody in there that doesn't care about them, right? So anyway, I went into that because it's very important to understand the community that I live in because my community is very demonized because it's a very high poverty community and still it's a very there's a lot of people that live there, right? There's like 11,000 people that live in what I will call my community. And so those people live there. There is many of them are fathers around 50 years old that have children. There's many and they're active fathers. There's a whole thing around like war against like, Black people don't take care of their kids. I see so many people taking care of their kids all over the place on my block and around my neighborhood. So I think I'm just setting the stage for like what type of community I live in. So when we talk about like the politics, I just want to do that reframe about elections and just talk about what are the broader lessons that we can learn about media literacy and critical thinking, and how we can ensure that Black Detroiters are equipped to analyze media messages, identify bias, and form their own informed opinions, right, regardless of the political landscape. And people need to be able to spot misinformation, narratives that are designed to keep us divided and disempowered, and also to remember how mainstream media portrays Detroiters, right? Because they portray us in a very disparaging light, right? They paint us as irresponsible, deserving of punishment, instead of acknowledging the systemic issues that led to the problems, that exist. And it's just important for us to analyze those messages and the deeper agendas at play.
Thank you, Piper. And this is classic Piper. I love Piper. And empowered information where like I would like hit a gavel, I would clap, I would knee slap and applaud that effort in that. And just even in framing, a lot of what you said has definitely been things that I appraise. And looking to 2025, I do want to engage in more discussions about this argument around voter apathy not necessarily being something of ignorance or accessibility, though those realities do exist, but some of it being a choice is people feeling as though it has not been the reciprocity in the system. And then also what that lens looks at, as I was reading an editorial. It's so funny because Yusef spoke to Wendell Anthony. Wendell Anthony had an editorial about what voting represents in the Black community inside the Michigan Chronicle. I want to say that was like last week or something. And I was thinking to myself, like, this is part of some of that disconnect that does exist. And the reason I asked that question, especially because so many sisters I know took the presidential election as through the framing of media lens as an affront to them, because that hyper representation of Kamala Harris extended into the attacks, personal attacks of so many Black women I know, where some are still looking at it as a healing modality of getting over what that election meant to them and how their personal character, who their agency is, and how they felt attacked by it. And that's the reason why I framed that question in that. So as we move to question 2, which we'll pick up in forums as we always continue this with Detroit is Different and explore more of that, and Piper Carter will definitely be in that. In what ways have you witnessed our community grow more conscious of how intentional communication can foster unity and collective progress?
So here I want to highlight the part where you talk about intentional communication. So I think intentional communication is crucial for building unity and collective power. So we've seen how media narratives can divide communities, right? And we've also witnessed the power of storytelling and authentic communication to bring people together. So first I want to talk about the division part, right? So the media, mainstream media generally, whether it's the news that's always focused on what we call so-called crime, although I don't believe in the word crime, but I would say, on average, most outlets that display Detroiters or the average Detroiter or the messages that come through about Black Detroiters are focused heavily, hyper focused on this idea of crime and positioning people, citizens, residents, Detroiters, people that live in poverty or live below the poverty level or that live in lower middle class or even middle class as criminals. And those messages are very harmful because it becomes internalized. And people, Black people, Detroiters, mothers, grandmothers, people on the block start to look at one another, their neighbors, the people down the street, the people that live around them, as enemies, as people to be feared, as people who are out to get them, and as though they're unsafe. And this is what leads to decisions that community members begin to adopt around wanting to, as I've experienced in a community meeting, ask for the National Guard to come in because they're afraid of a group of young men. Now, when I remember going to a community meeting, and the elders were saying that when they see a group of young people, teenagers, they immediately think they want to call the police. And my thing is, like I just told you, I live in one of the most heavily divested from communities in the city. We experienced through emergency management something that was called right sizing. And the right sizing plan, which was instituted through the previous mayor, Dave Bing, I think it was an NBA player, right? And the concept of right sizing was that because this is the narrative, they say because Detroit had lost population, these are their words, not mine, that they needed to make Detroit the right size. And so what that meant was they created what they called healthy neighborhoods. So they created 9 healthy neighborhoods, and all the rest of the neighborhoods they said were unhealthy and undeserving of resources. So that means that only those 9 neighborhoods would be sanctioned to receive any sort of resources. Resources, basic resources. That means streetlights, access to community, access to emergency services, cleaning the streets. They closed down all the community centers. They shut off was 100,000 people's water. They were putting people out of their homes. Over 250,000 people were foreclosed upon, and on and on. So all the ways in which a community, the reasons you would move. Oh, and over 250 schools closed. So any reason that one would have to move to a neighborhood was removed. That means that the businesses then had to leave. And so they intentionally destroyed these neighborhoods. Now, like I told you, most of the people that could leave left. So that leaves these neighborhoods with people who can't sell their house and who can't leave because they're not going to get enough money to move to another place. And they're not going to be able to afford to, survive if they move someplace else. And many people were on fixed income or no income, right? And so, you're looking at a population that was basically aggressed upon by its own government, right? Eaten by its own government, its own local government made up of people who are from the same neighborhoods and who look like them, right? So why do I continue to harp on these points? Because these are the points that are the real media points. Not that your neighbor is not, the average neighbor is not some scary Bigfoot that's going to come hurt you. And that's the truth. And I'm saying that from a position of living in what would scientifically be called a block that's hot, right? And what I mean by that is there's so much divestment that people are trying to get it. They need to get it, right? And in those type of situations, it's not looking at your neighbor like they're your enemy and someone that you need to fear, but it's someone that you need to survive with. So those are relationships that need to be created. Those are people that need to be understood. Those are people that are, if they're a stranger, y'all share a community, like y'all need each other. So y'all need to be trying to figure out who y'all are and how y'all can live together and work together. So those are very scary ideas because the media is teaching you that you got to be afraid of these people. But me, like I said, I have my block club. I go up and down my block and share resources with my neighbors. I learn who they are. I'm learning about what they do, and just learning how I can support them and how I can plug them into the things that I'm plugged into if they're interested, and learning how I can support the things that they got going on. And that's called building a real relationship. And it's not looking at the newspaper trying to figure out who your neighbor is and then labeling that person based on some white supremacist construct of what a Black person is supposed to be. Now, on the converse level, when we talk about what communities can do, I think about a project like Mapping the Water Crisis. And if you spoke about We the People of Detroit before, Mapping the Water Crisis is a participatory research project that the organization We the People of Detroit created through the work that they were doing to restore people's water. And what they did is they worked with Wayne State University and youth and different people in the community and teaching them how to do things like research and mapping. And what they did was actually map through interviews, conversations, and research the impact of water shutoffs on community. And what they learned through that research was the same places that I just named in the right sizing, the same zip codes and the same communities that were having their water shut off was the same ones that was being foreclosed upon, which the same ones where they were turning off the street lights, the access to emergency services, the street cleaning, and the schools. And they put color coding to it and they mapped it. And what's powerful about that is because these same people that are described in mainstream media as being incapable of understanding politics did a really important political project that they created themselves and disseminated themselves and packaged themselves. And if you go on the We the People of Detroit website, not only will you see that, they've done a new one that just came out like 3 weeks ago, shameless plug. And that one is called Toxic Water, Toxic System. And it's exposing the consequences and doing the research of the connections between the Flint and Detroit water crisis and how that was orchestrated and created. Shouts out to the devils that destroyed and murdered an entire city that is still under siege. And 10 years later has to live on bottled water to survive, right? And who is being blamed still currently? They're blaming the mayor, who wasn't even a mayor at the time. And the federal government hasn't given them their reparations. And we all know that Governor Snyder, got convicted, conviction overturned. And these are the messages that we ourselves know that happen and live through. And these are the messages that we need to cut through with outlets like Detroit is Different, which is where we get our messages across, because we know that we're not going to see them in other outlets.
Which actually goes into the next question.
Mm-hmm.
How do you keep your finger on the pulse of local information, needs and concerns, ensuring that you remain tuned in to communities' evolving issues, as it's a lot that you're staying on the pulse of?
Well, number one, like I said, you have to go back to having a real relationship. That's like being I hate to make it so mundane, but like if you're in a relationship with somebody, right? That's like being going on social media to find out about the person. You ain't in a real relationship if you go on social media to find out what's going on with this person. You got to be in their face and have a conversation with that person. Mm-hmm. And that's the same thing as it is with what's going on in the community. There are organizations that are on the ground that are doing real work. So either you're in relationship with those organizations, or you're learning from the publications that those organizations put out, or you know somebody that's in the organization, but you got to be invested and involved in your community to actually have a pulse. Because like I said, media is a business. Media, the corporate media is a corporation. And at the end of the day, information is to be bought and sold in the corporate arena. And so it doesn't, those outlets aren't even held to the standards anymore of having to tell the truth. Okay, so it's up to us, right? And so We the People of Detroit is putting out these books and these sort of very detailed and put together, packaged, examples of research that they've done in the community. Detroit is Different, and I'm gonna always shout out Detroit is Different for having consistent podcasts that are on YouTube and other outlets. Riverwise Magazine puts on a printed magazine. I believe it's maybe monthly or so. And, those are great stories that are written by community members, that are by people that are in community, that are involved in these organizations, that are sharing the information that they're working on as they're working on it, and talking to the people that are doing these things with firsthand accounts. Right. I want to shout out People's Platform, because People's Platform has an amazing newspaper. They also do a lot of political education in the community. They also bring people to learn how to speak in public comment. They also put out something. They have a racial equity tool where they teach community members how to, they have something called the community benefits agreement, and they help communities be able to understand when these corporations, Yusef spoke to it earlier, I think you did, when we talked about the ways in which these corporations want to come into communities and not have to pay their fair share. Why? You know, with the Pizzarina, that's what we call the Little Caesars Arena with the Illiches, right? So if y'all remember that fight that we were in, we tried to block that project, and people like, y'all don't want the Pistons to come to Detroit? Well, this is the thing. We don't want billionaires to get tax breaks out of the pockets of the schools, because that's what happened. The 1/3 of the school money that was supposed to go to the schools, the same schools where at the same exact time in the same exact headlines where they're blaming citizens from being too stupid to know what's good for them, to want to bring the Pistons back, which is a narrative that they didn't put the narrative that what the problem is that we are fighting against is that the Pizzarina wanted wanted the city council to agree to use the school money to pay for the project, while the schools had black mold, while they couldn't pay the teachers, while they don't have books, while they don't have a sufficient education system. So yeah, no, we don't want billionaires to get tax breaks. We want those tax breaks to go back into the city, because why should a billionaire not have to pay taxes while it's a different institution, but represent the city as well, while Detroit Water and Sewage Department could rain down on your grandma for $150 for owing her water bill, and if she's taking care of the kids, snatch the kids out of the home, and then accuse her of neglect and abuse and put them in juvenile detention. So how is that correct over making DTE pay their tens or $20,000 of water bills in arrears? So these are the ways in which, you know what I'm saying, our media outlets, the ones that we want to support, can get these messages out. You know what I'm saying?
All right. So with that, and it's long overdue anyway, I really want to pick up on all of these questions with you. Can we share in a Detroit is Different soon, so we can pick up on the last three? Because I want this to be the last one, just to stick to a timetable.
Okay, for the future?
Yep. I do want to pick up the rest of these questions and then throw a couple more at you for Detroit is Different. So stay tuned for me and Piper, because it's been a long time. When's the last time you came on Detroit is Different?
Probably the State of Black Detroit last year.
Okay. Too long ago.
Yeah. Well, let me say this about the future. So the future is bright. I know I named a lot of things, but mainly for the future, I'm really hoping that more people will rely less on these mainstream media sources for their information. I'm not saying don't look at them, right? Because I have to look at horrible sources like Cranes just to understand what's going on in business, right? Because I care about my community, so I need to know what the enemy's doing. But I'm not looking at Cranes for where I need to understand, right, like how my community should be valued or where I should be investing my dollar, right? I'm looking to sources like A Detroit is Different for who in my community is doing great work, who in my community I need to invest in, and what is really happening in my community. So I would say 2025 is awesome. People are afraid of the media and social media. Don't be afraid. Get empowered and get involved and take control of these tools, because the younger generations, this is where they're shaping their ideas and their identities. So if we're not there trying to support them in that, then you're leaving that to these other sources to be the ones that they look to for the information. So that's what I would say for 2025.
Thank you, Piper. And as you do that, you actually lead to the next discussion point, where we're talking Generation Z and Generation Alpha. And that is the next panelist for State of Black Detroit. And that is Juwan Howard. He leads Umoja Debate League, which is one heck of an organization. And also, the brother's done a lot this past year, taking people younger than him to Africa. You know what I'm saying? Actually, somebody that I'm connected to, they was like, yeah, man, that guy Jawan, he took my daughter to Africa. And I was like, for real? I was like, word up. I'm like, yeah, that's my guy, you know. And Jawan has definitely been active in building Umoja Debate League with a lot of other young people such as himself. He was another panelist from last year, and carrying on as we look at Generation Z, Generation Alpha, and making those connections. With that, Mr. Howard, how you doing today, my brother?
Man, I'm doing good. How are you, bro?
Good, man. And you got other projects going. You got books, you got a bookstore coming, and all types of things is happening, and keeping the garden going.
Keeping the garden going, man. Yeah, the Howard Family Bookstore. It's going to open up hopefully in April. We're looking at April for the grand opening.
There we go. So, with that being said, as Detroiters under 30, you know, living here, working here, as a Detroiter under 30, I should say, living here, working here in the city, how's it contributed to your personal and professional development?
In many ways. Like the first way I guess I can mention is regards to the history that Detroit has. Being able to lean onto that history kind of has, I guess it's like a launching pad for me to do some of the things that I do, because I'm not building off just like a shaky foundation. Things have happened before me, and I try to learn from those things in order to kind of spring me forward. But also Detroit, I've been privileged to be here because it's a place where you can, I guess I call it horizontal networking, where I can build with my peers. I don't know many other places in this country that has the young, rich talent that Detroit has, and like-minded folks where we can build together. So that's been a huge plus in everything, my professional, personal, the whole nine.
All right. With that, from your perspective, what avenues exist for fellow Detroiters under 30 to establish their careers and build fulfilling lives in the city of Detroit?
So there are some, but before I even get into the question, I think we need more. I think that there has to be a better pipeline for young people to become leaders in this city. It has to be better succession plans. It has to be more of the baton being passed. Oftentimes I go into rooms, I'm the youngest one there, whether that's a block club meeting, a city meeting, whatever the case may be. Young people have to feel more welcomed in these spaces to kind of, you know, literally take on whatever the next generation might need in terms of leadership. But there are still some avenues for us to get engaged. Community-wise, again, events like this, for one, starting off, when you're able to collaborate with folks, you can share ideas, you can get put in positions, you can do the whole nine. So events like this, other mentorship type of things, even with the city of Detroit, they have a young Department of Neighborhoods department. And what that whole entire department is supposed to be doing is helping young Detroiters kind of get tapped into leadership positions and how the city runs and functions. So you got other networking things. You got Black Tech Saturdays, a plethora of different spaces. We run 313, a couple other social groups where young professionals are trying to get together to kind of brainstorm and network. But those are a few that I would kind of go off top of.
Yeah, it's interesting you speak to that, because last year at State of Black Detroit, most of the time, I believe you were engaging and interacting with Baba Victor Gibson, if people know, definitely involved in so many different works in community. It was deep just seeing that exchange and what happened this year, even for you. So when you talk about more avenues, I definitely want to add this and challenge you on when you say that avenues and gateways for leadership and passing that baton, right? What could that look like for someone else? But more so, what does that look like for you for how you've been given access to opportunity from people older than you?
Man, I've been a sponge. I've really been a sponge to Detroit's, our elders, Baba Malika Keeney, Baba Gibson, Mama Moore. The list can go on about people who I've literally, I call before I make certain decisions. You know what I'm saying? Because they've seen it. They've been able to walk it. And I respect their knowledge, their wisdom. And so in spaces, again, I work in education and youth development. Detroit has a long history of that. And not just a history, folks who are 70, 80 years old still in the fight, right? So if you find yourself in the right spaces, city council meetings, school board meetings, things of that sort, you're going to interact with those individuals. One of the most I think impactful conversations I had over the past couple of years that kind of led me down this path was with Baba Malik Yakini. I was home from college, and this was, I want to say, 2018, and I was just volunteering at D-Town Farms. He didn't know me. I didn't really know him like that. And we just started talking. He told me about the importance of institution building and not just, doing just one-off type of things, but building institutions to solve short and long-term problems. And that changed my whole framework, just that one simple conversation, and how Umoja was built, how the Howard Family Bookstore was built, Umoja Village, the whole nine. So being intentional about seeking knowledge from those who've already done it is something that I kind of take very, very serious.
Okay, and this picks up with some of where Piper left off, leveraging technology. How have digital tools, social platforms, and virtual spaces supported your community building efforts and expanded your reach among younger audiences?
Man, so technology has been a huge ally in what I've been able to build up to this point. It allowed me to connect with folks digitally and in person, right? Sharing events, sharing my story, letting others connect to that story, finding commonalities in that. Once you put it out there, right, like the people gonna see it. For the most part, you're consistent. There's some algorithm stuff to go on there as well. But it's allowed me just a platform to share what I do with more people. In my community, I found them, but they found me as well. A lot of the team members that I have on Umoja, some of them I met through social media, and they've been solid since that point. You know what I'm saying? So without the interaction, I don't know if I would have met them, whatever the case may be. We can't make it to every single event in person. So that just allowed me that platform to build a broader audience.
In what ways do you challenge yourself to stay connected with community elders? And why do you believe these relationships are essential for Detroit's future?
Man, Detroit, again, I spoke to a little bit earlier, but the history that we have here, sometimes we don't even know what we walking past. I recently just learned about Baba Ed Vine, who owned the bookstore. And lo and behold, my path right now, I'm opening up a bookstore. I believe he had the first Black-owned bookstore in the city of Detroit, if I'm not mistaken. And I've been learning about his history, unfortunately, after he passed away. But just that knowledge that he probably would be able to pass down to me about running the business, some of the do's and don'ts, the whole nine, it might have probably would have saved me a lot of headache that I'm probably going to kind of embark on this next year, open up my own bookstore. But again, we're not building on just blank canvases. Detroit has a history of Black power. And so it's extremely, extremely important for the younger generation to lean on the elders, and for the elders to be able to pass this information down to us so that we can make good use of it to continue the mission for Black Detroit. So I'm very intentional about it. Like I said, very, very important decisions that I make. Baba Malik Yakini gets a call, Baba Gibson gets a call to kind of see, has this happened before in a different type of scenario? How can I move us forward? What should I be talking to when I go into these rooms? So I'm not just going there as Jawan, but all of that knowledge and from the decades before me, it's also walking into that room with me.
Could you describe a time when you felt unprepared because of your youth, yet discovered that your fresh perspective and resilience actually proved invaluable in this situation?
Man, trying to think of a time. Shoot, developing this bookstore.
Share, break it down.
Developing this bookstore. You know what I'm saying? I have Umoja Village, which is an outdoor community space. It has a garden, a stage, but it's an outdoor space. We built it from the ground up, and I consider it development, but I've never developed a full-blown building. This building sat vacant for like 25 years that I'm redeveloping right now. And so with that, right, like I ain't experienced in this. I got some carpentry skills here and there, but I've never done a project to this degree. And I was sitting with that one night and just trying to map out my plans. I write everything down in this little notebook that I have. And as I was writing stuff down, I'm like, oh, this kind of is a blank canvas in my head. I'm not jaded by past experiences. I don't have the knowledge of what doesn't work because I never did it. So I'm moving forward in a positive way. And I guess my youth and my inexperience in that case is an advantage for me because my mindset is going to happen like X, Y, and Z, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so I guess that's an example, if that makes sense, where my inexperience really is a benefit for me.
So with that being said, I definitely have to add on a tag for this one, because taking on projects like that, how do you look at resourcing something like that as more is always looked at. You know, the inspector, the this supply, or this is needed or that is needed, and you're learning in that arc. How do you keep that motivation of saying like, okay, this is a blank canvas and this is where I'm going to go as obstacles do come before you?
Man, where there's a will, there's a way. To be honest, it's just really that simple for me. As obstacles come, and I anticipated it. You know what I'm saying? When I first looked at the building, I seen like, okay, got some stuff I need to take care of. And so I already made mental notes. I wrote some of this stuff down as well. You know, I talked to other people that develop things. They got to go through the inspections with the city, which can be a headache. They got to go through the whole nine, dealing with contractors, all of that. I already kind of have all of those things in my head about what could go wrong. And I try to be very, very, very strategic about planning my steps to the point where even if something does, a mishap does happen, it's a plan of action for it to kind of follow up with it. Even that, and that takes patience. You know what I'm saying? That takes a little bit of audacity, but you know, I'm in it for the fight. So it is what it is.
And the last point on that before we transition, and this is a great gateway into closing out with our last presenter. How do you involve the collective around decisions like that? Because there will be so many decisions made about this bookstore. How do you create something where this becomes a collective for community and not just necessarily like a dogmatic vision that is of self?
Yep. So to give some context to it, I grew up about 6 blocks away from this bookstore location. My best friend grew up on that same exact block. So this is my neighborhood for real, for real. But even me not even trying to just, I know what's best for my neighborhood, because I might not. I'm right now conducting a community survey. And that survey asks the community very specific questions. Not only what type of books they want to see inside the bookstore, fiction, nonfiction, Black history, comics, the whole nine, but also what program you want to see in there, what organizations or businesses within this community you think are missing. So the community is literally telling me what's going to be in the bookstore and what the bookstore going to look like and how it's going to function. I plan to only hire folks that live within a 5-mile radius of that address. So the whole it's a community bookstore, real talk. Like it's really a community hub from the way we're framing it out. Everybody has a stake in it. And what they tell me that they want inside that bookstore, programming wise and books, that's what's going to be in there.
That works. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And definitely adding what you've been adding with so many of these projects. I'm looking forward to seeing more of the growth. And as you know, whenever, hit me up. I'm there.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we close out. And this is always tough, but this is how on point she is. We close out State of Black Detroit with the first person that actually showed up full in presence. And she was like, I'm here. I was like, all right, we still setting up cameras and lights and speakers and everything. She got like the behind the scenes of State of Black Detroit. And definitely let's make sure the camera's good. But one of the people that I've met that definitely is near and dear to my community, Hope Village Revitalization, on a project for Hope Village Revitalization years ago. And really being committed to community, how I've known it. So the thought process actually came through Piper Carter. Piper was like, you should get Sherry. You should get Sherry. I was like, yeah, I'll ask Sherry. That's a great idea. And then when we think about where that Sherry mindset is, these are the questions for community organizers. So Sherry Smith, how are you today?
I'm excellent, Khary. I'm excellent. I just want to say this is a real quality microphone. I tried to move it and it was not.
Larry,
it was not going nowhere.
these are the anchored stands. So when people get into podcasting, it's about 15 pounds. It's like you can do a curl with these.
Yeah.
You know, but most definitely we can move the mic. We can
no. It's fine.
Okay. All right. See, I like the frames, like the look. Wearing orange, I'm with it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Fly.
Appreciate it. At home, and I agree. Piper did tell me what to do. She was like, "Sure, you gonna be over there." That's what happened.
Yes. So shout out Piper Carter,
Yes.
always in the mix with Detroit is different. And community organizing, a lot of experience in this as like for real. When you were in Hope Village, that was like, I don't know what more boots on the ground it gets than in my community. You know, if anybody knows, like in that corridor, like 12th Street, Linwood, Davison, it's in the neighborhood where you gonna shake some trees and meet some characters.
Oh yeah,
me included.
Yeah, and that was my kind of introduction into organizing, I would say. So that was good times, and really real work in the city of Detroit. At the time over there, I was living off Finkel and Dexter, so it was very, very real over there.
Very colorful.
A
lot of the word that Yusef culture. A lot of
and I would say I worked to make it a little more colorful too. Just starting in my own like gardening journey and stuff in that area. People weren't looking for gardens over there.
No.
and we put some down and saw some really amazing response to that, you know, in the community. The community wanted to see more beauty around them, which is something a lot of people wouldn't say, right? And so just that experience alone was like, oh, okay, this makes sense.
Most definitely. Because what starts that seed in the ground, and people slowly come, then more people come, then the next thing you know, people are telling you, it's like, no, I'm supposed to get turnips today.
You
know, so, and being a grower and somebody more so, like I say, I see you as someone that connects in community. I'll start with this. What does success look like for you in your community work? And how do you measure it beyond formal acknowledgments or visible outcomes?
Okay. So I'll say I don't acknowledge it by formal acknowledgments at all. For me, coming from Detroit, what you know about people in Detroit who do anything for real, they don't do it for the acknowledgement. They don't do it for what outsiders say. And so if those people respect what you do, that's usually for me where I know I'm doing something right? You know, this panel today was pretty awesome because I happen to have connection with all the people on this panel today. And so what I was thinking about success was like when the people who I know are doing the work in a respectable way, know who you are, and know in their mind, see you as somebody who is reliable, who can work shoulder to shoulder with them. That's success to me. That and it's Kwanzaa right now. And so my first time celebrating Kwanzaa was in 1991. And not even at home. It was a school program. One of my teachers put on this Kwanzaa program at school. She tied our heads up and made these dresses and stuff. And I had no idea what she was doing. And last Thursday, both me and my daughter spoke at a Kwanzaa program 30 plus years later.
Wow.
And so just seeing things like that happen and know that some of the things that generations before me didn't pass down to me that I've been able to instill in my children, right? That for me is success.
When progress is slow and recognition scarce, what drives you to stay committed, and how do you sustain your motivation over time in community work?
So I think I'm a Steel Piper's reframing, but not totally, because I don't ever believe progress is slow. I think there are different seasons, right? Just like when we're growing in a garden, there's some times where you're going to bear a lot of fruit. And then there's other times that plant is going to be rejuvenizing itself. It's going to be taking nutrients into the roots and into the bulb for the next season. But it's not always 100% putting out that visible fruit, but it may be building stronger roots under the ground or spreading so that you have more for later. So I don't believe that there's ever time that there's not progress. I believe in those seasons, that's the time when we need to be investing, like Jawan said, in more of those conversations and more of those studies and more of that getting with our elders and learning that history of what needs to happen next. And are we supplying and working with our community? So for me, what keeps me going in that time is just connecting with people.
Based on your experiences, what are the most urgent challenges facing our neighborhoods? And how do you suggest we come together to prioritize and address them?
Number one, I would say is isolation. I feel like a lot of people, which feeds into the mental issues, is isolation. A lot of people don't feel connected to anybody. I mean, a lot of people will go out, those who are employed, who will go out to a job that they hate, or come home to neighbors they don't know, and sit in a house by themselves most of the time. And it's unhealthy for us. We just weren't designed to do that. So I feel like isolation is one because it feeds into the fear. It feeds into the ability for people to be manipulated through, like Piper talked about, the media messaging. It's easy for me to believe just about anything I see on social media if I don't interact with anybody outside of that. Like there's a lot of people who know me in different states and things. I have friends who can say all kind of stuff about people. And I always have to say, like, people at least, you can't trust nobody. You can't be in community with nobody. You can't do this. And I always say, I'm so grateful that's not my narrative. I'm so grateful that in Detroit, I can't say that. I can't say it's all backstabbers in the community. I can't say any of those things because I can see those people day to day. I can pick up the phone and I can go, nope, because I can call this person, I can look at that person, I can go over here. And so for me, I would say isolation is major in our communities right now. Another one I would probably say is I definitely feel like the financial pressures have a huge, huge hold on a lot of people. And there is I would almost put a lack of vulnerability in that space. I feel like our ancestors were a lot better at saying, hey, I have a need, right? We've kind of been taught this individual, I have to pretend like I never have a need, right? I have to pretend like I have it all together. I have to pretend like raising kids by myself is not hard and I'm gonna look good doing it and I'm gonna look like this filter is real, and none of that's reality, right? And so then when you are falling apart in your isolation, nobody is coming to help you because you look great doing all the things that you really cannot do. And so I feel like that lack of vulnerability is probably what's breaking our community more than anything.
How can residents collectively identify problems, set goals, and take actionable steps to create tangible improvements in our own backyards?
Talk to each other. We got to talk to each other. I feel like there are things that when we talk to each other, it's so easy to find out what the problems are, right? One of your neighbors, like I live on a block where one side of the street, we always have electrical issues, whether it's arcing wires behind our houses, but on the other side of the block, people got flooding in their backyard. If we never talk to each other, I could believe the only problem in this neighborhood is this electrical issue. But then my neighbors across the street are like, how dare you not think about what's happening over here? We got to talk to each other. And then we got to knock on some doors. We got to spend some time outside of our houses. I'm really huge on destroying grass in the city of Detroit and planting gardens and flowers and things that that will make people stop and talk to each other. Give people something to talk about. Hey, what is that? I'm glad you stopped by. Hey, I didn't know you could grow those over here. Some of those organic conversations are the things that help rebuild communities together. So spending more time outside of your houses. I read a book that said one of the top two things that contributed to safety in communities was not policing, was not Ring camera systems. It was the number of people on your block whose first names you know and the amount of time you spend outside your house. And we don't do that enough.
And I'm going to echo that, and I'm going to come in, and I'm not doing the usual. People say, Khary, you're always talking during Detroit is different. But I'm going to add this. What you speak is real, even on my own block. Yep. The garden that I have, the Detroit is different garden, now farm, has created such a relationship where even though I've been there for so many years and it's still families that are there, now even when new people show up, I'm not just the guy with the studio now. I'm the guy that's like, oh yeah, that's my man that throw me some tomatoes every now and again, which introduces different discussions. Yep. So I would argue that, it's been so much more of a security system as now as some, as we say, like it's a wave of like some people, some Yemeni families in my community now, some Chicano families in my community now. Certain people are like, okay, I don't know how to interact with them, but for me, it's like, hey, you want some tomatoes? Yep. You want some jalapenos? So it's opened up a gateway of a barometer where I'm not necessarily the unknown. Even if they turn it down, it started a discussion.
Absolutely.
In what ways has your volunteer and organizing work in your community contributed to your own development, both personally and professionally?
Oh man, I would say in every way, right? So I was raised by parents who didn't call it volunteerism. They didn't even say like we're serving. They just always did what needed to be done. So like if one of my parents walked into a place and they saw something needed to be picked up or somebody needed help with something, they didn't wait for somebody to ask them. They just did it. So that's how I was raised, right? And so then when calls would go out for certain things, I would just show up. One of my most impactful, probably volunteering experiences was they used to have a hospice in the city of Detroit where you get sent to hospice if you have 6 months or less to live. And so that experience was probably one of the most eye-opening I've ever had. And it probably shaped the way I entered into any other form of service because, you know, in that space, most people believe they only have a certain amount of time to live. Outside of that space, you have real life. We never have any idea how long we have to live, right? And so for me, that space in my former service then literally was just to make a person's day as least painful as possible. Whatever that was, whether that was just bringing some ice or you know, putting a cold towel on somebody's head because they were dealing with pain at the time and there was nothing they could do, or just keeping somebody company, right? And so that translated into community organizing, showing up as a support. For a long time, I think a lot of people envision organizing and activist work as the person with the microphone. And that just wasn't how I was raised. We were always raised as support, right? And so for me, it was like support. And Yusef also tells me what to do sometimes, told me to do this organizer training a few years ago. He's like, you're an organizer. And I was like, oh, I thought I was just, you know, the person who was showing up in the background, just helping out with stuff. And so that's kind of the track record for me. That's the goal, you know, show up and support. I feel like in community, I think of myself almost like as a spider. Like I like to connect just different things together. And I think we all have heard this from Baba Malik Yakini at least once. Like if you go into a room and Baba Malik is there, he's going to say, hey, do you know this person? And introduce you to somebody. And so that's kind of just been what I enjoy doing, knowing if I know somebody who does one thing and I know somebody else who does that, hey, do you know this person? Can I connect you to them? Or have you heard about this? I love bragging on Emoji Village. So Juwan being here is phenomenal because I'm one of their biggest cheerleaders too. And so just finding out about what's going on and telling other folks about it.
Which biases or assumptions have you had to confront in your journey? And what strategies have helped you unlearn them to better serve the people you're helping?
I can't say I've encountered a lot of biases, which again is a blessing. I'll say that. I've had the amazing privilege of being able to work with multiple generations of people and being able to just communicate with all of those generations in one way or another, right? You know, kind of stumbling through some of those things with the younger people, but I'm blessed with a teenager who helps me with some of the translation and some of that with the younger
Hilarious.
folks. And the critique, she gives me a healthy amount of critique as well. And so I would say some of the biases that I've come up against, sometimes if I'm not wearing my garden clothes like today, people don't know just how much I enjoy living a very filthy life and just being in the dirt and throwing pickaxes and things around. So other than that, not much. You know, most people, I feel like in community and in organizing work, I think most people expect that you have an open kind of horizon on who you're going to deal with because you never know. I think I don't know if it's a bias, but I think I just kind of came into it and just have met a lot of people who've confirmed that you can't think you're going to know what a person is just based on what you see them doing today. Because in community, a person who is serving the food today is running the org tomorrow, is picking up kids and doing a volunteer program in the afternoon. All those things have to happen for community to work. So yeah, I think biases are, sometimes I feel like those are things that are put on us from the outside, but I'm not going to get into that.
All right. We close with this. Can you share a real life example, experience story of how community organizing provided a supportive network for you or your family, offering not just resources, but personal fulfillment as well?
Oh yeah. So that's the part of it that I love the most for me. So earlier this year I had surgery in February. And so my community organizing family has always been very personal, very near and dear to my heart. And so there was never a shortage of the cause of what do you need? Do you need us to pick the kids up? Do you need us to deliver the food? Like what can we do? Can we drive you and take you somewhere? And so being able to have that vulnerability in a lot of the spaces that I take up space in has always been a blessing for me, which, is one of those things I feel like helps guard against burnout. Because when you can lean on the folks you're working with, you don't feel as isolated and worn down.
So with that, we close out State of Black Detroit. Thank you so much, Sherry.
Thank you, Khary. Thank you for inviting me.
So beautiful.
Thank you.
And we kept you guys till about 3:30, and more to come from Detroit is Different this year. Just stay tuned, stay connected to us. So much more. Piper's show is coming back this year, but it's going to start back with, like, I'm picking up in the studio with Piper very soon to finish off some of those questions and another discussion between us. Also, I'll be doing a lot more programming about community organizing myself. So that's a good breakdown and analysis. So Sherry's going to be on that show too. It'll be a live stream show kind of like this. What else is happening? Oh, January 1st, Detroit People's Food Co-op. More so the Mama Imani Humphrey space, as you may know it. There will be the Kwanzaa celebration, the community Kwanzaa celebration. Imani Faith, I'll be giving the keynote address for Hood Research. So shout out Mama Theo and all of that. With that being said, bid you adieu. Peace. End on the screen. Good.